Make sure you understand the difference between endocrine and nervous system. Which one's faster, nervous or endocrine? Nervous. Which one's faster, nervous or endocrine? Nervous. Which one's slower? Endocrine. Which one's slow? Endocrine. Which one produces hormones? Endocrine. Which one produces hormones? Endocrine. Which one's slow? Endocrine. Which one's fast? Nervous. What is the chemical used in the nervous system? Neurotransmitters. What is the major function of the endocrine system? Produce hormones. What is the cell of the nervous system? Neurons. What's the cell of the nervous system? Neurons. There are 4 mechanisms of communication. Direct just means gap junction. So what does direct mean? Gap junction. What does gap direction mean? What is direct? Gap junction. What is direct? Gap junctions. What is direct? Gap junctions. In gap junctions, does it pass outside the cell or between 2 cells? Between 2 cells. Remember, this is the gap junction, guys. This little area right here. So what's gap junctions? Direct. What's gap junctions? Direct. Does direct allow chemicals to pass outside of the cell, or does it simply go from inside one cell to another cell? Inside one cell to another cell. Okay. Remember, para means next to. What does para mean? Next to. What does para mean? Next to. What does para mean? Next to. Direct is what? Gap junctions. What's direct? Gap junctions. What's direct? Gap junctions. What's gap junctions? Direct. What's gap junctions? Direct. What allows hormones to communicate from cell to cell in the same tissue? Paracrine. What is communication from cell to cell in the same tissue? Paracrine. Okay, now, autocrine. Auto means self. What does auto mean? Self. Okay, so if you see that word self, and I usually like to put that in if I'm looking for autocrine, because I wanted you to recognize that it's acting on itself. Okay, it's when the chemical is released and acts on the cell that released it. Okay, so what do you call it when the chemical acts on the cell that released it? Autocrine. What do you call it when a chemical acts on the cell that released it? Autocrine. What do you call the communication that occurs when a chemical is released by the cell and acts on the cell that released it? Autocrine. What is it called when a chemical is released by a cell and it acts on itself? Autocrine. Which one travels through the blood? Endocrine. Which one travels through the blood? Endocrine. Does endocrine work at a distance or close by? Endocrine. Far away. Endocrine works where? Far away. Where does endocrine work? Far away. Which one's next to? Paracrine. Which one is self? Autocrine. Which one is self? Autocrine. Which one's gap junction? Direct. Which one is at a distance? Endocrine. Which is at a distance? Endocrine. Do most chemical reactions occur through positive feedback or negative feedback? Negative feedback. What do most chemical reactions occur through? Negative feedback. Where do most reactions occur? On negative feedback. Okay. Is thyroid hormones a type of amino acid hormone? Yes. Are thyroid hormones a type of amino acid hormone? Yes. Are catecholamines a type of amino acid hormone? Yes. In fact, you know what? I'm not gonna hold you responsible for the amino acid part, so don't worry about the classes. I'm just gonna cross that off. Okay. I do want you to know. Oh, excuse me. Hold on. Okay. So I do want you to know the different categories that fit within each. Okay. So, for example, thyroid hormones. Do they need a carrier? Yes. Do thyroid hormones need a carrier? Yes. What are the 2 thyroid hormones? T3 and T4. What are the 2 thyroid hormones? T3 and T4. What are the 2 thyroid hormones? T3 and T4. Name for me all the catecholamines. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine. Usually I would ask a question like this. If I'm looking for catecholamines, I'll probably say, which of the following is not a catecholamine? Okay? So an easy way to remember the catecholamines is just remember NED. Or, some of my other students have like it's easy to remember. Whichever you like. Okay? So which of the catecholamines? Ned. What's the other catecholamines? Ned. What's the catecholamines? Ned. By the way, Ned, for those of you who don't know, is someone's name. Okay? It was actually a friend of mine's name years ago. Thyroid hormones, do they need a carrier? Yes. Do catecholamines need a carrier? No. Does serotonin need a carrier? No. Does melatonin need a carrier? No. Okay? Now, the easy way to remember it is that thyroid hormones need a carrier. And if you look down, okay, steroids need a carrier. And we're going to talk about this a bit more, so you definitely want to make sure you remember which ones need a carrier. So do thyroid hormones need a carrier? Yes. Do thyroid hormones need a carrier? Yes. Do steroids need a carrier? Yes. Do steroids need a carrier? Yes. Name 2 hormones that need a carrier. Thyroid hormones and steroids. Name 2 hormones that need a carrier. Thyroid hormones and steroid hormones. Name for me 3 hormones. This one's a little bit of a trick I'm just going to do for you right now, just so you're prepared. Obviously, I'm not looking to trick you. But name 3 hormones that are going to need a carrier. T3, T4, and steroids. Because remember, T3 and T4 are what? Thyroid hormones. Okay? So, melatonin helps you what? Sleep. Melatonin helps you what? Sleep. We will be talking about serotonin at some point, so don't really worry about that right now. Okay? Make sure you know the different peptide hormones. Now, guys, the easiest way to remember this is if you forget an answer on the test about whether it's a peptide or a lipid hormone, because these are the only 2 that you're going to need to know for our test. Okay, in terms of classes. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the classes. You need to know all the hormones. Again, don't worry about serotonin. But I can ask you, is it a peptide hormone, lipid hormone, or amino acid? Well, it can't be an amino acid because I'm not going to put that as a question on an exam. So never put amino acid as an answer, okay? The only answers you should put down are peptide and hormones. Now, the majority of hormones are what? Peptide or lipid? Peptide. Which are the majority of hormones? Peptide. Is flat pig, FLAT, prolactin growth hormone, are those all peptides or lipids? Peptides. What about ADH and oxytocin? Peptides. What about insulin? Peptides. So is flat pig a peptide? Yes. Is flat pig a peptide? Yes. Is flat pig a peptide? Yes. Which one is a peptide? Flat pig. Which one's a peptide? Flat pig. Which one is ADH and oxytocin? Peptide. Which one is ADH and oxytocin? Peptide. Lipids, okay? Prostaglandins are responsible for pain. What are prostaglandins responsible for? Pain. Remember PMP. What are prostaglandins responsible for? Pain. Which one's responsible for pain? Prostaglandins. Are prostaglandins a type of lipid hormone? Yes. Is prostaglandins a type of lipid hormone? Yes. Now, guys, remember, if I didn't say it, you don't need to know it. So if I say it in this review, you need to know it. If I don't say it, you don't need to know it. That is your trick. Okay? Leukotrienes help with what? Inflammation. What do leukotrienes help with? Inflammation. Are leukotrienes a type of lipid or peptide hormone? Lipid. When in doubt, pick what? Peptide or lipid? Peptide. When in doubt, pick what? Peptide. What are steroids derived from? In other words, what chemical makes up a steroid? Cholesterol. What chemicals make up steroids? Cholesterol. Cholesterol makes up what? Steroids. Okay? Where are steroids found? Male and female reproductive system. Okay? As well as the kidney and the adrenal gland. Now, downregulation. Downregulation is when you have too much of a hormone, it causes a decrease in the number of receptors. So if you have too much of a hormone, the receptor is going to increase or decrease? Decrease. Too much of a hormone? Decrease or increase? Decrease. Too much of a hormone? Decrease or increase? Decrease. Too much of a hormone causing a decrease in the number of receptors. Is that downregulation or upregulation? Downregulation. If there's too much of a hormone and it causes a decrease in the number of receptors, is that downregulation or upregulation? Downregulation. If you have too little of a hormone, which causes an increase in the number of receptors, what do you call that? Upregulation. What's it called? Upregulation. What hormones are produced by the anterior pituitary? My flat pig. What hormones are produced by the posterior pituitary? Nothing. What is the function of melatonin? Sleep. What is the function of melatonin? Sleep. What gland produces melatonin? Pineal gland. What gland produces melatonin? Pineal gland. What is the function of pineal gland? produces melatonin? What's the function of melatonin? Sleep. What's the function of ADH? Water retention. What's the function of ADH? Water retention. What's the function of oxytocin? Uterine contractions. What's the function of oxytocin? Uterine contractions. What hormone is responsible for decreasing calcium concentration in the blood? Calcitonin. Just remember, tone it down. Calcitonin. What increases calcium concentration in the blood? Parathyroid hormone. What increases calcium concentration in the blood? Parathyroid hormone. What decreases calcium concentration in the blood? Calcitonin. Are calcitonin and parathyroid hormones antagonists? Yes. What does antagonist mean? Has opposite effects. So is calcitonin and parathyroid hormone antagonists? Yes. Are parathyroid hormone and calcitonin antagonists? Yes. Okay. Now, okay, so